The Virtual Boy was revolutionary for its time and was, to all intents and purposes, a kind of very, very basic version of the Oculus Rift. Using the goggles which fitted to the user's head, gamers could play Nintendo games with incredible 3D graphics. Well, incredible for the time. Unfortunately, the Virtual Boy, released in 1995, had one glaring design flaw. The juddery 3D graphics of the mid-90s game gave these users terrible headaches and resulted in it being a commercial failure. That being said, these early experiments did lead to much more compact things like the 3DS and also created a competitive collector's market for mint-condition Virtual Boys among Nintendo completionists. Launched back in 1985, the tiny Sinclair C5 was an electric bike whose creator believes he was about to revolutionise private transport. So back then, Clive Sinclair, whose company were renowned for making calculators, made this little vehicle, and it was widely mocked and derided as being dangerous, as despite being road legal, it was dwarfed by pretty much everything else on the road. And even those who liked its environmental credentials were put off by safety concerns, because surely you're just going to get crushed to death. The portable record player was a failure for two glaring reasons. Firstly, who in their right minds would carry around a bulky device designed to play notoriously skippy vinyl on the move? And secondly, it was released in the same year as Sony's Walkman, which play tapes, which don't skip every time you bump them. Needless to say, the portable record player was quickly dispatched to the archives of history. In an age before military aircraft had caught up with the needs of the ordnance they were built to transport, tanks had to be carried to battlefields aboard ships before being offloaded and driven to their final destination. After deciding that this was inefficient, both the British, Soviet and Japanese all experimented to see if it would be possible to attach wings to the tanks, allowing them to operate like gliders. Thankfully, planes capable of carrying tanks on board were developed before the flying tank was ever put into development, meaning that those living near military bases don't need to watch the skies in case of falling tank. The robotic Readmatic was invented in 1963, and it was designed to help readers who were overwhelmed by pages of text to slow their rate of reading and take more in. The timed device would move its straight edge down at the pace of the reader, but it was a massive failure. Not only because of its price, a simple ruler was just much more efficient and cheaper, but also because of its so-called robotic arm, which obscured much of the text that it was supposed to help people to read. The idea of using a vehicle which operates on one wheel goes all the way back to Rousseau's elaborate monocycle in 1869, and it's been widely suggested by adopters as a much more efficient way to travel than 2 or even 4 wheels. Unfortunately, efficiency doesn't really enter into it, and since other forms of transport are quieter, safer, and perhaps more importantly, easier to drive, it's unlikely that any mono-wheeled vehicles will be on sale anytime soon. Before the age of glorious high-definition or even colour television, there was an attempt to revolutionise the world of cinema and home entertainment by introducing smell into the experience. I don't know about you, but I've already got enough of a smell in my home. The specially made Smell-O-Vision film, Scent of Mystery, was released in 1960, and aside from a few sporadic attempts to bring it back, the idea just never caught on. No. It's hard to take the Segway seriously, and is now most often used for tourist tours of European cities rather than the revolutionary green transportation method that its creators had intended, which is a shame. Kind of more fun if we were all on Segways, but never mind. It suffers from a lot of the same problems that the Sinclair C5 did in 1985 after being widely dismissed as a toy for rich people, which it kind of still is. The Segway was not helped by news that the CEO of the company, Jimmy Heselden, had died after plummeting 80 feet off a cliff whilst riding a Segway in 2010. As for the hoverboard Segway that you see everyone with now, its fate has yet to be seen. Seems to me that it's just wasting money for showing off on something which, when it runs out of batteries, is just very heavy to carry. Companies have been promising to introduce flying cars to the public since the 1950s, and while the technology exists to make that happen, most inventors have struggled to find ways to create vehicles which are efficient, affordable, and most of all safe. A group called the Advanced Flying Vehicle Engineers, which is an awesome name for a group, made the Mizar flying car by basically fusing a Cessna plane with a Ford Pinto. But it was so badly designed, and the concept of taking to the skies in a rickety Ford Pinto was so terrifying, quite rightly, that they barely sold a single vehicle, despite the car appearing in a James Bond movie. Even James Bond couldn't sell a flying Pinto. Unveiled to much fanfare in 2012, Google Glass was all set up to revolutionise the way people view technology by bringing a heads-up display straight up out of science fiction stuff and right into people's everyday lives. However, Google's bluster and massive public release led to hysteria in the press when they realised that Glass had only sold a few thousand units to developers, testers and early adopters, and people kind of quickly turned on the product, especially because of the fact that people were a bit weird about it. I mean, it means you could film people without them knowing. It's a bit strange. It's like someone holding a camera in your face all the time. People didn't like that, and that's kind of fair. Since Google had only ever intended to manufacture and sell a few thousand prototypes before putting the project into full production, the project is still in development. The press have long memories, and it's entirely possible that Google's savvy approach to the press may have bitten them in the behind before they could even bring a finished product to market. Google Glass seems a bit unnecessary. I mean, you just look a bit weird, and people are going to be a bit weirded out by you. And sure, it gives you advantages as the person who's wearing it, but for everyone else, it's a little bit creepy. Mind you, what do we know? People seem to be buying those stupid hoverboard things, so it seems people will buy anything.